You are listening to the Social Hotelier Show, a podcast that inspires hoteliers to create meaningful and memorable experiences for their customers in pursuit of their passion. We share our views and experiences relating to hospitality, technological trends, and also relating to humanity. Here is your host, Sam-Erik Ruttman.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Hotelier Podcast with me, Sam-Erik Ruttman. Have you ever wondered how a single podcast interviewed could transform your business and establish you as the thought leader in your industry? Today we are diving into the world of podcasting as a powerful tool for entrepreneurs with Noémi Beres, the co-owner of Podcast Connections. With over 11 years of experience as a content creator and online marketeer, Noémi has mastered the art of helping entrepreneurs share their expertise and growing their business through the magic of podcast interviews. Her passion lies in creating engaging, valuable content that leaves a lasting impact. Let's uncover her insights and strategies that could redefine your approach to business growth. Welcome, Noémi, and thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show today, Sam-Erik. It's an honor.
First, I think for our audience to get some background, can you tell me about your professional experience and why you founded Podcast Connections?
Yes, I try to, put it in a nutshell. It's a long story to make it a little bit shorter. So I became an entrepreneur in 2007, and up till 2020, I worked in the online travel industry with my husband, and we had a company. And as you mentioned, I was doing content creation, social media marketing, you name it, wearing many hats at the same time. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we had to pivot and we had to figure out a new business model. And that was Podcast Connections, thanks to our Irish mentor who helped us to create our podcast booking agency in 2020. And basically, that was the time we, started our company and started to work with amazing entrepreneurs worldwide, especially female entrepreneurs from the e-commerce industry. That they were our first clients. Since then, we are very versatile and we have so many different clients across the globe. It was a pivot. It was thanks to a pivot, and that's why we started our podcast booking agency.
I have noticed there are quite a few agencies these days who are engaging in this business, and I was wondering, how do you see yourself standing out? Because I have noticed I've been contacted myself by several agencies, mostly US-based, in fact. But what are your thoughts? What are the things important for you as the agent to stand out and find to reach out to your clientele?
It was very interesting when we started because, as you mentioned, most of the podcast booking agencies are US-based. And we have a few European agencies out there, not too many. So it was interesting to, reach out to people and tell you who you are. And, from Cyprus, and originally I'm from Hungary. So they had to just put two and two together. What are they doing in this market? So it was really interesting. But I think we bring a unique perspective into the podcast booking agency world because first, we're European. So we see things a little bit differently than our, the podcast booking agencies in the US. And also, I'm also an artist, so that kind of brings my creativity into the game. So I think these things, they're like kind of, we stand out of the crowd. And everybody has its unique flair and unique story. And I think that makes us stand out and being maybe more interesting to them.
Yeah. You say that you're focusing on helping entrepreneurs grow. Can you talk a little bit more about it and also what was your journey evolved since starting the Podcast Connections?
Yes, it was a long journey. And, when you have to reach out to people like purely like cold emails, cold messages, and you have to tell them why they have to pick you, why they have to choose you. So that was very interesting. And it wasn't easy because it's never easy to, as like quote unquote, sell yourself to people and to, and make them trust you with their money and with the way we provide service to them. Many of the people, they didn't even hear about this type of service. They still ask me like, is this a real job or is this a real thing that you do? It's basically a PR agency, but we solely focus on podcasts. And I really enjoy the journey because I'm doing different things than before. I'm connecting people. I network a lot with people. And that's just so refreshing compared to the job I was doing before. So for me, it was really, really an eye-opening experience that I can work with people across the globe thanks to Zoom and thanks to technology and establishing a business in the past 4 years. We also reached a 6-figure this year, so it was a big thing for us. Because we just started, in 2020. So, and usually, like many companies, they finish after 3 years or 2. So it was a good sign that we have a future ahead, and we'll be around for some time for sure in this market.
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. I'm just curious about when you make the connection with someone that they trust you to find the right interview host and so on. What expectations do you have on the interview, the guest, for example? And also then I want to know, of course, what expectations do you have on the host also?
We help our clients to be prepared, and that's really important because once you appear on a show, you have to be prepared for anything that's happening there. And also being unique, being genuine, I think that's really important when it comes to a podcast guest. And you also need to know the host, and you also need to listen to a few episodes in order to understand the host style, the vibes there. So, and you always have to bring value to them because podcast interviews are not about promoting yourself and your business, but it's about sharing your story, sharing your knowledge, and bringing value to the table, bringing value to the conversation. And then on the other hand, when it comes to the podcast host, it's very important that podcast hosts learn to listen, and they ask very thoughtful questions. And for guests, like share your story in a way that resonates with your audience, with the host audience. I think that's really, really key, and we all should focus on that. And plus enjoy that conversation because it's all about kind of having fun and having a genuine, friendly conversation between two people.
Yeah, I noticed that those interviews, because I like to call them conversations rather than interviews.
Yes.
I think once we get a kind of a chemistry going over during that podcast interview, it actually becomes a lot of fun because you're kind of almost not a ping pong table tennis game, but you're kind of exchanging ideas. And as a host, I'm always curious. What are the questions that the audience would ask my guest? And I'm thinking along those lines, not so much always. Of course, I fall into that trap that I'm trying to ask the question what I'm interested in, but I also, very important, I try to think about what would be something that the audience would be interested in and why they are listening to the podcast. But we talked about the strategies. Maybe maybe 3 tips that a guest should think about that would make the podcast interview successful for them. What do you think they should be paying most attention to?
Coming prepared, I think that's a must. It's really important. Never wing an interview because you need to be prepared. You need to prepare your topics. You need to prepare your talking points, and just mentally, emotionally, physically being present. Maybe that's the second one because we all have jobs, we all have clients, and we have many things going in our lives. But once you are with the host in that space, just do a few breathing exercises before you start your interview, just to relax and just to ground yourself and be 100% present with the podcast host. So that was the second one. And the third one for me is being respectful with the host time and the whole space, and don't treat this as an advertisement because this is clearly not. I always emphasize this. And of course, there are a few other things like, being punctual and promoting the episode after the interview. There are so many things that a great podcast guest should focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. in one way, there are two kinds of video podcasts, because it's becoming also expected that you are multi-purposing as a video, for instance. That's what I do on YouTube. Have you come across that there are hosts that are saying that, well, I give you a choice for your guest to either do a live stream or do as a pre-recorded? Do you come across that, or are there certain things that maybe you notice that the guest will be preferring one to another?
Yes, I came across those, definitely. I had a few interviews myself when we had live interviews or even a live radio show, but that's a little bit different. Yeah, we had that, and there was also pre-recorded versions. So I don't think, in my opinion, it doesn't really make a huge difference, because once you are prepared and once you know what you want to talk about, it doesn't really matter if it's live or not. I guess for some people it can be a little bit intimidating that it can be edited. So you have to give your best shot for the first time, because there's no place for pre-recording and people can watch you online live. But you don't have to think about that once you're there. You just focus on the conversation, and that's my best advice I can give. And the other thing is, just when you have a pre-call with the host, even if it's a live interview or even a pre-recorded one, it's always a good start for the conversation, because you already know each other a little bit. Just like we had a pre-call before our conversation, I think that was really important, to get to know each other a little bit, to follow each other on LinkedIn and check out each other's posts. So that's kind of like, podcast guesting is all about building relationships, not just interviewing someone and not just giving questions back and forth. As you said, like ping-ponging questions and replies. So it's about building relationships, and building relationships can start before the actual interview. So I think that's important.
Very good. In your work with entrepreneurs, what trends have you noticed in how podcasting is shaping business growth and personal branding in recent years? The reason I'm interested in this, because suddenly, podcasting has been around since radio, more or less, but now suddenly, lately, I'm reading that, it's not too late to start podcasting. I heard the same line a few years ago when I started myself. Now it's not too late to start, but it is not too late to start, right?
No, it's not. It's never too late to start anything. As Gary Vaynerchuk, or aka Gary V, says, it's never late anything to start. Like whenever you are in your life, it's never late. I know that a lot of podcast hosts started a podcast in 2020 during the pandemic, because it was, everybody was just at home and they wanted to do something. So many people just started a podcast, but step by step, gradually, it became part of a longer-term marketing strategy. And it's very, very interesting to see this. So it's not just about Google ads or not just about Facebook, Instagram ads, but it's about building your authority, building your brand with the help of podcast interviews. And it's fascinating, because you create a lot of content. So it's a form of content creation. And you're creating evergreen content, which you can use for the upcoming years, because the information you're sharing with your audience, it's evergreen. So it's valid next year and in 2 years' time. But it's also a very great branding option for your company, because you are becoming basically a reputable figure for your company. You're appearing on this podcast, people Google your name, you pop up everywhere. So people will trust you, and will trust you with your knowledge. Because if this person, having podcast interviews weekly and they are there everywhere, that means that they know something well, and not just talking about something, whatever stuff, but they know their stuff. They know what kind of information they want to share. So that's really important. And it's also a very cost-effective way of brand yourself and market yourself, because you are just a guest. The hard work is with the host, because they're doing the editing, they're doing the recording, the scheduling. So, yes. Very
good. Now, in terms of equipment or technology, what are the sort of the minimum that you expect that a podcast guest should have on hand so they can shine on the podcast?
Well, we don't need many things, and they don't have to be extremely fancy. And once you have a great camera, on your computer or on your laptop. I mean, that usually works. What we usually advise to our clients to buy an external mic, like I wouldn't say something like this, but you can buy something for, $20-30 on Amazon, and they work perfectly. So an external mic, I think it's important. Also good lighting, having a ring light. It's also important, but I think it's all about the quality of the sound, because many people still just listen to the podcast, so the sound quality is really, really important. So yeah, ring light, a good camera, and a mic, and off you go. You can start it.
A friend of mine, who when he did this podcasting, he always was sitting in the closet where his coats are, because in that way he would not have any echo during the recording. So I haven't dared to try that, but I think that is actually a very good tip. If somebody has a big enough closet where they can sit in and during the podcast, it's actually a very nice, comfortable space to sit in. You feel kind of cozy there.
Yes, true. And you need some like cushions in the room where you are, or carpet. And also, let's not forget about the earbuds or headsets, because of avoid echo. I mean, most of the podcast hosts will ask you specifically to use earbuds or something, so to stop echoing, so the sound quality is much, much better.
Yeah, I mean, I always recommend, because when I do the editing, it's quite, the guests do me a big favor if they are prepared from tech point of view. If they're hardwired, that also reduces any chance for the Bluetooth creating any echoes. And also, daylight is obviously the best light if possible. But if not, then having some prepared and just looking in the camera and checking themselves that there is enough light, and also the background, that the background kind of fits. Usually, some of the guests who are publishing book, they never forget to put their book that they're publishing in the background. But also, the camera. One of the solutions I'm using now is that I'm using my mobile device or my iPhone, if you will, because I think the quality I can get with the mobile device has saved me quite a bit of money, not having to buy a separate camera for this purpose. But that has. Now the technology is so good. I mean, the only thing that you need to have a pretty good tripod, or somehow where the camera or the iPhone is set, so that you have kind of a secure setting.
Absolutely. I mean, iPhone, you can do everything nowadays, and it's perfect for sure. For sure.
So, what role do you think storytelling is in creating compelling podcast interviews? How do you help entrepreneurs tap into their unique stories?
I mean, storytelling is a must for sure. I mean, because so many people think, I don't have a story to share. Everyone has a story to share. They don't even know about it. They have a story. So when we meet them, we always try to get the most of the information out of our clients and tell their stories to us. Because once they start to tell their stories and craft their stories, it will be just so much easier when they get on a podcast. And you always have to be conscious about how long the story is, because an average podcast interview is about 45 minutes long. So you can't create just a monologue about you, your life, your business. So it has to be in a condensed but very enjoyable, sweet form to share with people. That's really important. And also, I have to emphasize that when it comes to storytelling, be open, be vulnerable, and be honest about your story, because people will realize or will notice that if it's not. So, and they can really connect, align with you, and understand you better if you have a great story to share with people. And you have to take time for that too, as like preparing your topics, preparing your talking points. You need to prepare that story, that really just your genuine story that you want to share with the listeners. And you will share that story so many times by being a guest on podcast interviews that it will become so much easier.
Yeah. How do you tailor your approach when matching entrepreneurs and podcasts to ensure the collaboration benefits both parties and aligns with their goals?
I tried. It's a great question, Sam-Erik. So, I focus on understanding both parties, focus on understanding both the guest and the host point of view, because what we do is we like matchmaking company. I mean, we match people what they want to share, and does it align with the host message? Does it align with the host style? I think that's really important. So when we start to work with someone, we really need to get to know them. And that's why we have a strategy call with them, aka coaching session, where we learn a lot, so we can present them the best possible way to the podcast host. And I think that's the most fun part. What we do is just to find the right fit for people, because it's just so amazing when you realize it's like, oh my gosh, this person is just perfect for that podcast. And because interviews are not just podcast interviews, but as I mentioned before, building relationships. So it can be start of a great business relationship or friendship even. So I think that's an important part when it comes to podcast guesting.
I mean, you are so right. I mean, I have several of the guests that have been on my podcast show. We became friends. I mean, online friends. We don't really have a chance to meet personally unless the person travels visit my country or vice versa. But then there's that collaborative. In fact, I found that some of my guests are doing podcasts themselves, and so we are basically swapping guests, or I'm introducing someone I know who are an expert in the kind of field or topic, and then they can have interesting conversation. So that is part of that relationship that we are sharing. And then we're looking at but I usually look at if we have had a very good conversation, and then we are exploring maybe another episode a year from now, because that kind of builds that opportunity and kind of finding a different angle to the topic that they are expert in. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and now we need to ask you about the memorable success stories where a podcast interview significantly impacted an entrepreneur, business, or personal growth, or someone that you remember that has made a very big difference in during your career as an agent.
Yes, I have two examples. One of our clients, she's from the US, and she's a famous e-commerce expert, and she started to work with us when we started her podcast booking agency. I used to think she was the first client, and she just started her podcast, and it wasn't really a famous podcast or anything, because she just started out. And after a few years, she's been with us. I mean, she ended up in the top 1%, 0.5% of e-com podcasts. So that was a big thing for her, because she went on other people's podcasts to promote her show, basically. And it really worked well for her. And the other thing is basically me. I can talk about my example, because I'm doing a lot of podcast interviews, and it's just amazing when you get on podcasts and you talk to people, talk to different hosts, and when we finish the interview, they want to hire me to work with me. And proof is in the pudding. So it's just a great example that with the help of podcast interviews, you can be even hired by the host. And it happened many times with my clients, because they could help with something that the host needed in their businesses. So I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So looking ahead now, we're almost at the end of 2024, and a lot of things have happened during 2024, and before that, during the COVID period, where a lot of people have had time on their hand. But how do you see the podcasting landscape evolving, and what strategies are you implementing to stay at the forefront of these changes, and also maybe some tips for people who want to become podcasters or podcast guests?
Yes, I mean, that's a very complex and great question. Well, I mean, the world is changing, AI is here, and it will be around for a very, very long time. So what I can see first, that implementing AI and implementing technology or video interviews and the video part of interviews into podcast guesting, it will be very, very important. And also, many podcasts are becoming more and more niche focused. Not just about they talk about everything they want, but they are very precise about what they want to cover during their interviews. So I think the podcasting world is changing, by being niche focused and by using more AI and more video content than before. And and that's what we try to do as well, to implement our business, obviously AI and new technologies to make our life and work easier and to serve our client better. So tips for clients for the future. Yes. So if you're struggling, for example, to come up with ideas, what kind of topics you want to talk about, or how to create your own bio first. I mean, AI is there to help you. I'm not saying that you have to just copy and paste everything that comes through ChatGPT or any other tools, but it's a great way to start with it, and it's a great base for anything. We should use technology to our advantage, and also for podcast hosts, I think on the other way around, and because there are transcripts, and you can now make video content and audio content so much easier, even if you don't hire anyone. So I think the key for the upcoming years will be AI for sure, and the way technology changes.
Yeah, I mean, I have noticed that I have used different platforms over the years that have done. I started with video and live streaming initially, and then I ventured into the podcasting, and now I'm doing exclusively video podcasts, because I find that there are people who obviously want to listen to an audio feature when they're walking, or they are doing something else, or some people just enjoy watching to looking at the expressions of the interviewed and interviewer on a TV screen while they're watching it on YouTube. So it's evolving. But also I think now with the mobile devices, I mean they are so good that you can actually conduct your podcast interview with your mobile device, and just make sure you have not relying on the built-in microphone, but you have a separate microphone, and then you don't have to meet in person, you can just be online. So I mean, I'm testing all those things to try new things and new ideas. Something that is coming up quite soon is that I'm concerned about the downtown of Helsinki. Like many cities, downtowns are kind of being not deserted, maybe that's too strong of a word, but a lot of businesses are leaving because people are working from home, and then they are doing their shopping in suburbs, in shopping centers and so on. But now there are businesses that are becoming interested in doing pop-up events in downtown area. So I'm going to cover one of those pop-up events in Helsinki, and I'm going to just bring my mobile device and a microphone and do a live stream, and that is becoming a podcast. So I'm testing that, how's that going to work. So I'm looking forward to this little test.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like very interesting and fascinating, for sure.
Yeah. But I have two more questions before we wrap up. One question that I like to ask all my guests, besides what we have talked about. As you mentioned, you're living in the beautiful island of Cyprus, which is famous for hospitality and tourism. Yeah. What trends do you see happening in hospitality that the hoteliers should take note of?
Yes, the trends that should happen here, it is more about eco-friendly approach when it comes to hoteliers, and also using technology to the fullest when it comes to booking. So to provide seamless booking for the customers, I think, or for travelers, that would be really, really important. And also sustainability. I mean, I think Cyprus, unfortunately, still very behind when it comes to sustainability compared to other European countries. It's more about package holidays, more about quantity than quality. So I think, sustainability, eco-friendly options, I mean, that would be just so crucial in Cyprus. And because Cyprus has so many things to offer, so many natural beauties, and it's not just about, dinners and pubs, and it's more about you can bike, you can hike, you can swim in the sea. There's so many opportunities here. And the weather all year round is 350 something days sunny. So we can definitely use that, or hoteliers can definitely use that to their advantage when it comes to, improving their businesses. Yeah,
I've been a few times to Cyprus from work, and I for me, going to the mountains is to me very special. In the Troodos Mountains, I think that's a very special place with a microclimate, and that is, to me, I mean, beaches are beautiful, but I think going beyond the beaches, there is so much more that I was very surprised. Did you know a really famous person many hundred years ago already went to Cyprus and Leonardo da Vinci. Can you believe it? Did you know that?
I didn't know about that, but
Yeah,
we always learn new things. Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he went to buy some lace because they were very famous at that time, creating handmade lace. I mean, we're talking about many hundred years ago, but so he was a man of, he was a Renaissance man, and he also knew that Cyprus is a special place.
Wow. It is indeed, and I remember that we visited some, like these hidden villages up in the mountains, and these old ladies, they're still sitting outside in front of their front doors, and they're still making those beautiful laces, and you can still buy them.
Yeah.
And they're still around.
That's very good. Good. That is also a good reason to visit Cyprus. So lastly, people want to find out more about podcast connections, and I think we have in our conversation with their appetite now. Oh, I want to be a guest on a podcast. So how can they find you, and how does it work to connect with you?
Sure. Please visit our website. It's podcastconnections in plural.co.com. And you can always find me on LinkedIn. If you type my name in, Noémi Beres, I will pop up there with a little microphone sign next to my name. And and I'm happy to connect with anyone.
Noémi, I appreciate you joining today and this episode. It has been it's a wonderful conversation with you, and thanks very much for your fantastic insight.
Thank you so much for having me today, Sam-Erik. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to the Social Hotelier. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button that stay updated. We have an incredible lineup of guests coming your way, so stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations. Until next time, take care and keep exploring.